While I do think this scene right here is going to be used for devious means and, it's definitely going to probably get a couple of people into the show just for the sexual innuendos alone. But this episode went more crazy than I was expecting and hoping for, because as soon as I saw that weird torture device that, seemingly a young girl, child, person, don't know, but was just closed in, blood draining. Was she feeding human meat? Was it a weird death experiment? Did the character live? And then to see what really went down and how they avoided the kind of classic trope of poison, because even though you could argue it's a kind of poison, the idea of this sin magecraft and the idea of human sacrifice to create these like little balls, these like almost blood marbles, I guess is what I'd refer it to. And the fact that, this concoction, you put it in their food or their drink, and then you can have them wrapped around your finger, and if they betray you or lose your trust, or in the case of like the general bandit scene, right, they're about to be arrested, we don't want them to talk, you use one of those marbles, and then in return they turn into this monstrosity that kills themselves, or they survive the transformation, and as we saw with the police, they kill them for her. I've never seen a more big balls move in some time than that dinner table scene, because usually, the character wouldn't lay their cards out on the table this soon. They would say, ooh, I wonder what happened. I have no idea. No, her? She didn't give a shit. She's like, yeah, I killed them. I poisoned all of you. And then the first person who I had a suspicion it would be that woman. Just she kind of gave me some Karen energy, so I was like, there's no way she's about to survive this situation. The fact that it wasn't even a simple, like, her arms transformed into almost like, it kind of reminded me of, like, when you see anime or stories where, like, the vines or the roots of, like, a tree or plant life start rapid growing and they kind of, like, go, like, weird spirals and it just kind of overtakes the scene. It was like that, but it was her own arms and bones. And then it started strangling herself. And then by the time that scene was over, she looked like the wacky inflatable arm tube man. And I was like, holy shit, like that was way more brutal than I was expecting. Like, it's not that the show has shied away from like, you know, gory stuff. It's just the unnatural things that happen to a human body. Like, to me, that's way more graphic than seeing a head get cut off or seeing a lot of blood. It's the weird mutations on the human body and just recognizing how painful that must be. And the fact that this is all to get revenge for what happened to her mother. And holy shit, the way you could turn a group of people who had no interest and clearly no loyalty to you. If there was ever a target painted on your back, you probably had it before the whole poison sandwich situation. And now they know, holy shit, we can't even double cross you because we're going to turn into those creatures. I think it's an interesting way to get her into the castle, though, because the idea of funding someone who basically has a mission of going to Fantasyland, a place they don't believe exists, to try to, you know, get rid of this outer worlder who apparently, you know, for her, she can't kill her, she can't do anything every time she attempts to. Doesn't work out, so she needs traveling money. Well, we can't just pay you, even though you're talented, for basically shit all. You have to complete a mission, and that mission just so happens to rely on the castle that kind of is targeting her as we speak. So that's pretty nice, I have to say. I'm really liking where the end game of this season is going. It really feels like the stakes have been raised tenfold, and the overall vibes that the antagonist right now is giving me is so much more interesting than where I thought the second half of the show was going to go just a couple of weeks back. But I mean, just leave it to the executioner and her way of life to completely subvert tropes and just turn it into something quite memorable. Like, honestly, the most, I guess, eye-rolling part of the show for me is probably the whole Akari overly flirtatious, kind of in-your-face, cute girl dynamic. But given what we know about what's truly going on in there, I can accept it. It's just really not something that entertains me. And honestly, I might go as far to say the whole Princess and Momo scenes are far more interesting than the general Akari and Menno scenes. Like, I don't know, that might just be me. But I love the idea of someone who's like so like infatuated with someone like Menno, but then is hanging out with the princess more often than not than she is with her crush sort of a thing. And I love the fact that the princess is such a troll. Like, you locked her in a cave full of monsters. She's not even mad about that. And the fact that you immediately try to kill her when you meet up with her again. they just end up having drinks because she recognizes if I can't kill her in the initial sneak attack, there's no point in fighting. That's just what she wants. Just seeing that type of dynamic as you get like the casual history lesson of what really went down behind that great wall of fog. The idea that it is one of the great catastrophes, kind of like the idea of all the monsters in the world was kind of like the aftermath of this girl's power. And the fact of the matter is, like, that is without living death, which does explain what we saw last week because it almost felt like a cracking coming out of the water. So the idea of what we learn in that moment is pretty interesting, and the kind of casual competition between these two. But in terms of the general dynamic between Akari and Menno, while it may not always be my cup of tea, I do like how they string her along, because now that we do know what's truly going on with her in terms of the resets, I'm curious to see, because it feels like if there's ever another moment that like the true Akari would pop up, it would have to be this moment, right? Because there's going to be a scene, either Menno or maybe Akari, going to be placed in that weird chamber torture device, and then probably a reset would happen is what I'm suspecting. And I'm interested to see what type of remark she'll make, because the last time we saw it, right, when it came to the old woman and just like her recognizing and making these remarks, oh, this usually doesn't happen, or, you know, I always try to defeat this thing, but it never works. So I'm curious to see what type of hints we'll see, because, you know, the idea of how many times she's reset is definitely an interesting question that I've seen a lot of basically anime watchers bring up, and I myself am also really interested in seeing. Though I will say the action in this episode was really, really well done. At first I was confused why she gave her dagger to Akari, because I was like, you know, it's not like it's a giant broadsword, right? Like, why does she need to get rid of it? It's not like it's going to hinder her kicking abilities. Didn't even cross my mind that she kind of almost like enchanted it, so then when obviously the decoy, which was Akari, gets kidnapped and the knife is removed from her hand to his, then she can almost do this electrocution move. And just seeing how just easily she kicked these two's asses, I mean, I thought that was the cool moment of that. And then in comes the apple scene of her taking a bite and then turning them into these monstrosities. Really cool stuff. And the fact that they're still finding new ways to play around with magecraft in such brilliant ways, and the anime studio clearly having fun animating it, brings a grin to my face. Recently I've said that it kind of feels like the episodes in this show, they kind of have like the first half being more slice of life, with the second half kicking into full gear and just really knocking our socks off. But I'd honestly argue that the first half was probably more exciting than the second half, but honestly, like 3/4 of this episode was like that high octane energy. It really was only a handful of moments that were a little more slow in downtime. And honestly, I'd go as far as say one of the stronger episodes as well. I mean, last week just completely knocked my socks off. This week, same thing. I really like this arc. I really like what they're building up, and I hope it stays around longer than just another episode or two, because what they're building up is just such interesting content with just such grotesque animation that just leaves my stomach churning in the best possible way. But thoughts if you have any, whether you love the source or if you're anime original, thoughts down below, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.